to a new class of thermodynamics. I'm Dr. Mohammed Uzair, and today I'm again going to continue the same topic of entropy. In the last class, we basically discussed about the increase in entropy principle, and then we performed some numerical problems, and at the end, we developed the TDS equations, and we are going to start from the TDS equation now. So here we are going to discuss about the entropy change of liquid and solids, and then we will discuss about the gases as well. So when we are talking about the liquid and gases, liquid and solids, so liquids and solids are normally treated as incompressible substance, and already we have discussed in chapter 4 when we were discussing about the specific heats, that for incompressible substance we normally say that the specific heat at constant pressure and the specific heat at constant volume both are identical, and normally we use the, instead of going to write the Cp and Cv, we are going to write C, because there is no meaning of specific heat at constant pressure and the specific heat at constant volume if we are going to deal with the incompressible substance. So if we have the incompressible substance, so it's mean the change in the volume will be zero. So if the change in the volume is zero, so delta V will be zero. So in the last class, we basically developed this TDS equation. So it's simply ds is equal to du by dt plus p dv by t. So if we're going to talk about the incompressible substance, so it's mean this dv is zero. So ds is simply du by t, because this term is equal to 0. So we have ds, and this ds is du by t, and normally the du is c dt. The du is c dt, because we are talking about the constant volume process, because there is no change in the volume for incompressible substance. So we have c, which is du by dt. So I'm going to replace this du and I'm going to put c delta t. So this is the relationship or the entropy change for liquids and solids. So here this since Cp is equal to Cv is equal to C, and the du is C dt for incompressible substance, therefore the entropy change during a process is determined by integration, and when you are going to integrate this equation, then you will get like this one. So we have the integration of this one, so we are going to get s2 minus s1 for this ds, and then when you are going to integrate this one, so we will have the c as a function of t, then we have dt upon t. If we are going to deal with the average specific heat, so I can take this c outside, and then it will be c average. If I'm going to take this one outside from this integral, then it will be c, and then you will get the ln t2 upon t1 when you are going to integrate between these two limits. So simply for liquid and solid, the entropy change or s2 minus s1 is simply c average times ln t2 upon t1. So this is all about the liquid and solids, and here we have taken the specific heat as a constant. That's why we can easily take the c outside from this integral. Now moving to the gases, as we know that ds is du by t plus p dv upon t, but here we have the gases, and gases are compressible, so it means you cannot use dv is equal to 0. But for gases we have equation which is pv is equal to RT, and we know about du as well. So I can say that du is simply cv delta t, and pv is equal to RT, or I can rewrite p is equal to RT upon the v. So if I'm going to put these values here, so I will get like this one. So you can see here we have ds is equal to, instead of du, I'm going to put cv delta t upon t, so cv dt upon t plus instead of P upon T, so it's simply R upon the volume. So R upon volume dV. So I will get like this one. So now if I have to check the entropy change, I have to integrate this one. So entropy change is simply you have to integrate the whole term, but when you are going to integrate, you will get like this one. You will get S2 minus S1 equal to the integral of 1 to 2 Cv as a function of t, then dt upon t plus, and here if you can see we will get r and then we will get ln v2 upon v1. The integral of this term is easy, but there is some complication because Cv is the function of temperature and we already have the temperature here. So we have S2 minus S1 is equal to the integral of Cv as a function of t times delta t upon t plus r ln v2 upon v1. So we are getting this entropy change when we are going to use the first TDS equation. We have another TDS equation, and the second TDS equation is simply in term of dH, which is like this one. So we have dS is equal to dH upon t minus v dp upon t. So here I am going to change the dH by Cp delta t, and instead of going to replace this p, I'm going to replace with v upon sorry, I'm going to replace this v upon t with the help of this ideal gas equation. So ultimately I will get the equation like this one. So I will get S2 minus S1 is equal to the integration of Cp as a function of t times dt upon t minus r ln p2 upon p1. So in the previous one we have the integral of Cv as a function of temperature, and now we have the integral of Cp as a function of temperature, and in both cases this specific heat of the ideal gases depend on temperature. So it's mean we should know the specific heat as a function of temperature to integrate these terms. As we know, as we already discussed in chapter 4, that we had some relationship for the Cp. So if I'm going to use that relationship where we discussed that the Cp is dependent on the temperature, where we were getting like Cp is equal to A plus Bt plus Ct square plus Dt cube. So if I'm going to put that relation in this equation, so ultimately I will have a long integration. I have to perform a long integration again and again to find the entropy change for different process. So instead of using the Cp or Cv as a function of temperature, what we do, we normally use two different approaches. The first one is either we can perform this integration by simply assuming constant specific heat. I'm going to use this constant specific heat, and it will be called as constant specific heat. Sorry, it will be called as approximate analysis. The second one is evaluate these integral once and tabulate the results. And this one is basically exact analysis. So we have two different analysis. We have the approximate analysis and we have the exact analysis in order to find the entropy change of an ideal gas. Because inside the integral we have the Cp and Cv, and both are dependent on the temperature. So now we are going to discuss these two choices one by one. In the first method, or approximate analysis, what we do, we simply assume that the Cp or the value of Cv are constant, and normally we take the values at average temperature, as we did in chapter number 4. So if this is the equation for the entropy change for an ideal gas, so if I'm going to take the Cv as constant, so I can take the values outside from the integral sign. So after doing that, when I'll apply the integration, it will become like this one. So I have the C average, and then the integral of dt upon t, so I will get ln t2 upon t1 plus r ln v2 upon v1. So this is the entropy change when we have the constant specific heats. We have another equation where we have S2 minus S1 and then we have the integral of Cp delta T upon T. So again, if I'm going to assume a constant specific heat, so what will happen? I can take the Cp values outside from the integral sign, and by doing this, and after performing the integration, I will get the answer like this one. So here I will change in entropy, and then I have the Cp average value ln P2 upon T1 minus, because in the derivation we got the negative sign here, so we have the negative, and then we have R ln P2 upon P1, where this R is the gas constant, because I'm dealing with ideal gas. So this is all about the constant specific heat. Now the issue is, if we can use the specific heat approximation, then why we have to use the exact analysis to find out the entropy change? We will solve a numerical problem after 2 or 3 more slides, and you will see when we have the small temperature difference. You can see here we have T1 and T2. When we will have the small temperature difference, then this approximate analysis and the answer got from the exact analysis will be almost same. So the error will be very less. But in any case, if the temperature difference is high, then we have to check, or we have to use the exact analysis, because the specific heats of the ideal gas varies non-linearly with the temperature range. So in any case, if the temperature changes during a process is large, if the value of T1 and T2 are large, if the difference between T1 and T2 is large, then we have to use the exact analysis. And the exact analysis, because we have the Cp and Cv as a function of temperature, the specific heat basically depends on the temperature. So it means we have to use a relationship of the Cp or Cv with respect to temperature. If you remember, in chapter number 4, we did some numerical problems where we integrate the equation with a relation where we replace the value of Cv, and the relationship was like A plus Bt plus Ct square plus dt cube, and we had the different value of A, B, C, and D for different gases. So it means we have the relationship, but it is very difficult, or it is very lengthy to perform the integration at different temperatures during the calculation. So it's basically a laborious work. We have to perform it again and again. So what we do, instead of performing the integration again and again, we simply say that we are going to check the entropy with respect to a reference temperature, and we denote it by S naught. So this entropy or S naught, which is the function of temperature, is basically with reference to zero temperature or 0 Kelvin. So at 0 Kelvin, we have the value of S not equal to 0. So here, here you can see we choose absolute 0 as a reference temperature and defined a function S naught as this one. So now we have the equation like this one. We have the S naught, which is equal to 0 T Cp T dt upon T. And after performing the integration, the answers are already tabulated. We can check in the appendix that we have the different tables, especially for AR. We have the table A17, where you can see that we have the S naught values against the given temperature. For any temperature, we will have the S naught value. So if we have the S naught value against each temperature, and the reference is absolute zero, or the reference temperature is basically 0, so what we do, if we have to find the entropy change, so simply we will check the S naught values against each temperature, and then we will subtract the values. So we will not perform the integration, because the integration is already done and we have the tabulated values. So here, this is the equation. This is the equation for the entropy change for an ideal gas in terms of Cp. So if by the definition we know that Cp T dt upon T, if we have 0 to 1, so it's S naught 1, and if it is 0 to 2, then we will have S naught 2. But right now we have 1 to 2, so it's means we have S2 naught minus S1 naught. So we can easily check these values from table at the given temperature of T1 and T2. So instead of this, I am going to put S2 naught minus S1 naught here, and then I will get the equation like this one. So I have the entropy change, and we have S2 naught minus S1 naught minus R ln P2 upon P1 in terms of kilojoule per kilogram Kelvin. So this is the entropy change in terms of when we are using the exit analysis or when we are using the variable specific heat values. So we have two different methods. We have the exact one and we have the approximate solution. So here we have the question. If you see in the question, we have air which is compressed from an initial state of 100 kilopascal and 17 degrees Celsius. So because we are dealing with the air, so we have to convert the 17 degree into Kelvin. So we will have a temperature of 17 plus 273 Kelvin. So it is compressed to a final state of 600 kilopascal and 57 degrees Celsius. In the question, we have to determine the entropy change of air during the compression process by using the property values from the air table. Means you have to use the exit analysis, and then in part B you have to use the average specific heat. So as we discussed in the previous slide, that for the exit solution we have to check S2 naught minus S1 naught based on the given temperature. So right now we have the temperature of 17 degrees Celsius and we have the temperature of T2 equal to 57 degrees Celsius. So by converting into Kelvin, we will get the temperature in Kelvin, and from table A17, we will check the values of S0, and then we have to simply put in this equation, and then we will get the answer because we know the value of R, P2 and P1 is already given, so we will get the answer. Here you can see that the S0 is basically dependent on the temperature, while the entropy change is dependent on the temperature as well as on the pressure. Right now we have the value of R, P2 and P1 is already, the values of P1 and P2 are already given. So I can check the S1 not at 17 plus 273 Kelvin and S2 value at 57 plus 273 Kelvin. So simply using the table A17, I have to check the values and simply you have to put in this equation and you will get the answer. So this is the S2 value, this is S1 value, and then we have minus R value is given, ln P2 upon P1, and this is the answer. So the entropy change during this process is minus 0.3844. So by using the exit solution, we can find out the entropy change. So right now we are getting the minus 0.3844. In the part B, when we are using the average specific heat, so we have to check the average temperature first. So we have the 17 and we have the 57. So by adding these two temperatures and then divided by 2, we will get the approximate average temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. So from the table A to B, I have to check the specific heat value at 37 degrees Celsius, and then using this relationship, this is for approximate analysis, where we are assuming that we have the CP value of we are going to take the CP value as an average value or as a constant value. So we will check this CP value from table A to B at 37. So 37 is basically the average temperature of 17 plus 57. So simply you have to add and then divide by 2. And then we will check the table A to B, and then we will get this value CP. So from the table we will check the CP value, ln T2 and T1, both values are given, minus R ln P2 upon P1. So simply you have to put the values. And remember again, this is T2 upon P1, so you have to use in terms of Kelvin because we are dealing with the gas, and in the gas we have to always use the temperature in Kelvin form. So we have Cp ln T2 upon T1 minus R ln P2 upon P1, and then you will get the answer of minus 0.3842. So you can see here we have the minus 0.3842, while in the previous case it was 0.3844. So 0.3844 and 0.3842. Answer is very close because the temperature difference is very less. We have the 330 and 290 Kelvin. So the temperature difference or the temperature change during the process is small. That's why we are getting almost same answer. But in any case, if the temperature change in the process is high, then we have to use the exit solution. We have to use the part A rather than part B. now after performing the exact and approximate analysis, we have the sub heading of isentropic processes of ideal gases. Isentropic processes. Isentropic process means that the entropy remains constant, that there is no change in the entropy or the delta S is equal to zero. So several relations for isentropic processes of ideal gas can be obtained by setting the entropy change relation developed previously equal to zero. But still we have two different approximation. We have the exact one and we have the approximate one. So for both cases or for both approximation, we will have the different relationship. So first of all, I am going to discuss with the exact solution. Sorry, with the approximate solution where we are dealing the CP value as a constant value. So we have the constant specific heat, and when we are saying that we have the constant specific heat and we have the isentropic process, in the isentropic process we know that the entropy change is zero. So we have this equation. For the constant specific heat, we have two different equations. The first one is like this one. We have in terms of CV, ln V2.V1 minus, plus R ln V2.V1. And we are saying that we have the isentropic process, and in the isentropic process, S2 minus S1 is equal to 0. So if we have S2 minus S1 is equal to 0, so this equation will become like this one. We have this one is equal to 0, so we have S2 minus S1 is equal to 0, and then I am going to change this one, so I am just shifting this one on the other side. So we have the plus here, so on the other side it will become minus, and then I am going to divide this CV on the other side, so it will become ln T2.P1, which is like this one, then equal, and then by shifting this one on the other side I'll get minus R ln V2.V1, and then going to divide CV, so it will become minus R upon CV ln V2.V1. We have the ln on both sides, so we can shift this value, this one, at the top of this one, or as a power. So I can write the equation like this one. We have ln T2.T1 is equal to ln V1 upon V2, and then we have R upon CV. Here we have the negative sign, so I can simply remove the negative sign by changing these terms. We have the V2 upon V1, and then if I'm going to replace this one by V1 upon V2, so it will become negative 1, and then negative will become positive 1. So this negative is cancelled by changing this one. So right now we have ln T2 upon V1 is equal to ln V1 upon V2 R divided by CV. Now I'm going to shift this one as well, this R by CV as well. As we know that R is Cp minus Cv. R is Cp minus Cv. R is the difference between the specific rate constant pressure and the constant specific rate constant volume. And we know that K is equal to Cp upon Cv. We have the ratio of Cp upon Cv, which is known as K. Therefore, I can simply rearrange these two equations, and then I will get R upon Cv is equal to K minus 1. So by rearranging or by solving this one, we will get that R upon Cv is equal to K minus 1. So instead of this R upon Cv, this one, it will become, like this one. We have T2.T1, and I'm just going to change this R upon Cv, so it will become K minus 1, and then cancelling the ln on both sides. So ultimately we will get the T2.T1, where when we have the entropy constant or isentropic process, then it's simply V1 upon V2 power K minus 1. This is all about the isentropic process of ideal gas, So whenever we have the ideal gas and we have the isentropic process, then we can use this relationship. This relationship is basically derived from the equation of the entropy change for an ideal gas when we have the CV value. We have the Cp as well. We have another equation which includes Cp. This one. Again, we have the isentropic process, so it means we have this term equal to 0. We have S2 minus S1 equal to 0, and then if I'm going to change this one and I'm shifting this one on the other side, and then by solving all this stuff, I will get this one. So it will become like T2.T1 equal to P2.T1 K minus 1 upon K. You can prove this one by yourself. So we have two different relationships. The first one is between the temperature and the volume, and second one is the temperature and the pressure. But still we can find out another relationship between the pressure and volume as well. If I'm going to put this value, if I'm going to equate, because we have the T2.T1 here, and in the previous equation we had the T2.T1. So if I'm going to equate these two equations, this one and the previous one, so by rearranging the equations, I will get like this one. We will have the P2.T1 is equal to V1 upon V2 power A. So simply with the help of ideal gas equation and then with the entropy change, we can find three different relations between temperature and pressure, temperature and volume, and the pressure and volume. And these relations are used only for isentropic process and for an ideal gas. So when I'm going to summarize this one, so I'll get like this one. We have uh, TV K minus 1 is equal to constant, or we have TV K equal to constant, or we have TP 1 minus K upon K is equal to constant. We can rearrange this one. So either you can remember this one, or you can remember these three relations. So at this stage, I'm not going to find the relationship for exit approximation. In any case, if you want, you can solve it by yourself, because you know the ideas, and you have to put the S2 minus S1 is equal to 0, and then you can easily solve it. From here onward, we will discuss something which is slightly practical knowledge. So first of all, we have the reversible steady flow work. Steady flow work. So work done during a process basically depend on the path as well as the properties at the end state. We know that we have the boundary work like this one. We have the boundary work PdV in period of PdV between state 1 and 2. So it's basically the work done is basically dependent on the state as well as on the path. So this is basically the reversible or quasi-equilibrium moving boundary work associated with a closed system. Normally when we are talking about the quasi-equilibrium process, so quasi-equilibrium process is basically an ideal process, and whenever we have the quasi-equilibrium work interaction, so you will get the maximum work output from work producing devices. So whenever we have the work producing devices like turbine or generator, normally turbine, because we are talking with respect to mechanical one, so you will get the maximum work output. And whenever we will have the work consuming devices, we will get the minimum work output for with ideal cycle or ideal process. So if we have the compressor, then it's mean we are going to spend less amount of work, and in the case of turbine, we will get the maximum work output. So this is possible only when we have the ideal cycle, when we have the ideal process. Otherwise, it is not possible. Now here we are basically going to define, or we are going to drive a relation for reversible flow work. So if I'm going to apply the energy balance for a steady flow device undergoing an internally reversible process, so I can simply write down in differential form like this one. We have the change in the Q as reversible minus the change or delta W is equal to change in the enthalpy plus the change in the kinetic energy plus change in the potential energy. Now we neglect these terms by saying that we have the stationary system. So we will have only dH or change in the enthalpy. So this is the steady flow equation or the energy balance. Right now we are taking that the work to be from the system is positive. We are taking the positive direction for the work to be from the system, So here we have the delta Q and we have delta W. We have dH, change in the kinetic energy and the change in the potential energy. So as we know from the definition of entropy that the delta Q for the reversible system is simply TdS, because we have the change in the entropy is simply delta Q upon T. So we have like this one. And the first TdS equation is TdS is equal to dH minus V dP. So if I want to combine these two equations, so I can simply rearrange this equation and it will become like this one. So we will have delta Q is equal to dH minus VdP. So instead of like this TdS, I'm just going to replace by dH minus VdP. So if I'm going to put this one here, then we can easily cancel out this dH, because this delta Q is dH minus VdP. So by putting this one here, so it will become dH minus VdP then minus of this one, and then we have dH. So this delta H and then this delta H will cancel out each other, and then we have like this one. So by rearranging this one, so I will get like this one. We have minus of delta W equal to V dP, this one, because here we have the negative sign, on the other side it will become positive one, and then we have the change in the kinetic energy and then change in the potential energy. So assuming that we have the stationary system, first of all I'm just going to check with the reversible work. So reversible work will be like this one. You can see here this reversible work is basically specific one. We have the small in terms of small letter. So we have the specific reversible work, which is minus integral of one integral between 1 to 2 and VdP minus the kinetic energy, and then we have the change the potential energy. So if we have the stationary system, then we can easily neglect this one and this one, so it will become like this one. So you will get the reversible work, which is equal to minus of VdP between 1 to 2. So if we have the incompressible fluid, if we have the incompressible fluid, let's suppose solid or the liquid, then this specific volume will remain constant, and then we can take it out from this integral sign, and by integrating the equation you will get minus V, this is specific volume, minus V P2 minus V P1. So this is the reversible work. So you get the reversible work, which is minus V P2 minus P1. Sorry. Here, we basically have the reversible work in specific form, which is minus V P2 minus V P1. And remember that in this start I said that we are taking positive sign for the work from the system. So here it was the work to be from the system or the work output. So we have taken the work positive work output as a positive one. Sometimes we have the work input as well. Normally we have the devices like compressor, where we have to put work as input, and then we have to compress the gases. So work input to a compressor is minimized when the compression process is executed in an internally reversible manner. Here we have the work as input, so it means the work is going inside the system. That's why I'm going to use the reversible work with the positive sign. The negative sign that we got in the previous slide, it was for the work that is out from the system. Now this is the work which is going inside, so negative sign will cancel out with the negative one, and then you will get the positive sign here. So we have the reversible in, so this is in. So instead of using negative sign here, so we are saying that it's in, so it's positive one. So the first thing is we can minimize the work or the compression work if we have the internally reversible process. But in order to maintain or in order to achieve the internally reversible process, the cost is involved or the economy is involved, because it's not very easy to maintain the internally reversible process. Here we have another or more practical way to reduce the compressor work. In this way, basically we try to keep the specific volume of gas as small as possible during the compression process. So we have to basically keep the specific volume of gas as small as possible. Now this is done basically by maintaining the temperature of gas as low as possible during compression, since the specific volume of gas is proportional to the temperature. But the problem is we have to compress the gas, so it means we have to increase the pressure, and pressure is directly proportional to temperature as well. So by changing the pressure or by increasing the pressure, temperature will increase. So what we have to do, we basically need to cool down the gas during the compression process. So to reduce the work input to a compressor requires that the gas be cooled as it is compressed, because if we are going to change or if we are going to increase the pressure, the temperature will increase, so it means the volume will also change. So we have to maintain the pressure, we have to maintain the temperature. So it's better to cool down the gas, and it's basically done by a cooler. To have a better understanding of the effect of cooling during the compression process, here we are going to compare the work input requirement, work input, because we are talking about the compressor, so we have the input. So we are going to compare the work input requirements for three kinds of processes. The first one is the isentropic process, means there is no entropy. So when we are talking about the isentropic process, so it means it involves no cooling at all. The second one is the polytropic process. Polytropic process basically involves some cooling effects. And then we have an isothermal process. So it involves maximum cooling because it's isothermal, so it means temperature is not going to increase. So assuming all these three processes are executed between the same pressure levels, P1 and P2, in an internally reversible manner, and the gas behaves as an ideal gas, so P is equal to mRT or P is equal to RT with constant specific heat. The compression work is determined by performing the integration, and then we will get these three equations for different processes. With the isentropic process, then we will get the compression work like this one. For polytropic process, we will get like this one, and for isothermal process, the compression process will be like this one. We have three different work. But if I'm going to draw a PV diagram for these three processes between these two limits, P1 and P2, so it will be like this one. So you can see between 1 and 2, P1 and P2, we have three different processes. We have the isentropic process, where N is equal to K. We have the polytropic process, where N is between 1 and K. And then we have the isothermal process, which is like this one. For the isothermal process, we have N is equal to 1. So on this PV diagram, the area to the left of the process curve or this line is basically the integral of VdP. So this area is basically VdP. So thus it you can see here from this equation, for isothermal process this area is less. So you can see the left side or left portion or the left area of the process curve is VdP or the integral of VdP. So for this one we will have the maximum one, and for this isothermal process we will have the lowest work input. Remember that whenever we have the adiabatic compression, which is P is equal to K, this is the isentropic process. When we have the isentropic process, N is equal to K, so it's when we have the adiabatic process. So in the adiabatic process, this is adiabatic process, it will require the maximum work input, while the isothermal process, it requires the minimum work input. So it is better to compress the gas with an isothermal process or with the cooling. So one common way of the cooling the gas during the compression is to use the cooling jackets around the casing of the compressor. So normally we provide the casing in which any fluid is moving, and we can perform the cooling effect. So this is the cooling, and then we are going to minimize the work input. When we have the work producing devices, so our purpose is to increase the work. But when we have the work consuming devices, so we have to decrease the work input. So this is when we have the when we have the cooling effect. But sometimes we perform multi-stage compression with intercooling. Let's suppose if the pressure limits, the P1 and P2, they are high. If we have to compress the gas between high pressure range, so we are not going to perform it with the help of single compressor. So what we are basically dividing the complete compression in the multi-stage. We will compress up to a limit, and then we will cool down the gas, and then we will again compress. So it's basically a multi-stage compression. So here we will use different stages, and then we will perform the multi-stage compression with intercooling. So with the help of intercooling, we will maintain the temperature at the initial level. So here if you can see the PV diagram or the TS diagram as well. So this is the initial state number 1, and this is the state number 2. So we have to compress the gas from here to here. So this is the initial compressor. If we have the one compressor, so I get a line like this one. But what we do, we'll compress the gas up to a level, and then we will do some intercooling with the help of intercooler, and then we will compress it again. So it means we have the multi-stage compression. We have a compression here, we have intercooling, and then we have another compression. So we have multi-stage compression. Again here on the TS diagram you can see this is point number 1 and this is like P1 and this is the P2. So from here to here I'm not directly going from like this one. Instead I'm going up to a intermediate pressure which is Px, then going to decrease the pressure or going to decrease the temperature at constant pressure, and then again going to change the pressure or going to increase the pressure. So normally the multi-stage compression or this intercooling is done at constant pressure. You can see at constant pressure. So we have the intermediate pressure line here which is Px. So the size of the colored area which is like this one, this one. So this is the work saved. If I'm using single compressor, so we have to perform this compression. But right now with the help of intercooler we are moving like this one, so it means we have saved this much amount of work. So the size of the colored area, the saved work input varies with the value of intermediate pressure Px. This one. What is intermediate pressure? It can be like this, somewhere here, it can be like somewhere here. So where should it be to get the minimum work input? Sorry. So here. So in order to get this Px, we have to find the optimum value of Px or the intermediate pressure. So it is of practical interest to determine the condition under which this area is maximized, because we have to save some work input. Normally the total work input for two-stage compressor is the sum of the work inputs for each stage compression. So it's basically like this is the compression of first one and then we have another compression. So we have to add these two. So when we have to check the Px, means what is the intermediate pressure to get the maximum work saving. So what we do in order to get the Px value, simply we are going to differentiate the work equation, which is this one, total work equation, then putting equal to 0. And the first, if we are going to differentiate any relation and then and putting equal to 0, then we can check the optimum value. So by doing this thing at the end, we will get that we have Px is equal to the square root of P1 and P2. So at this point, or if I'm going to rearrange like this one, so I'll get like this one. So this is the, in order to get the minimize the compression work during two-stage compression, the pressure ratio across each stage of the compressor must be same. When this condition is satisfied, the compression work at each stage becomes identical. That is the work compression for first stage and the work compression for the second stage, both are same. Then we will get the maximum work saving, and then we will get the and then we will get the minimum work input. After this one, we are going to check the isentropic efficiencies of the steady flow devices. Actually, what happened that if we have the isentropic process, then it is basically an ideal process where we have no irreversibility or we have the constant entropy. So we will get the idealized answer if we are going to talk about the isentropic process. So here we are going to define the isentropic efficiencies, and with the help of isentropic efficiency we can check or we can measure the deviation of the actual process from the corresponding ideal one, because the isentropic process is always ideal one, where we are assuming that the entropy remains constant during the process. So we have the isentropic efficiency of the turbine. So turbine is basically going to produce work. So here, if we have the isentropic process, so you can see here we have the HS diagram. Even we can draw a case diagram as well. So here the entropy is constant. So whenever we get the entropy constant, so you will get the maximum work output from the turbine. But in actual cycle, what happens? We will not get this straight line, rather than we will get this curve. So this is the actual process. So how you can define the isentropic efficiency of a turbine? So simply it is defined as the ratio of the actual work output of the turbine to the work output that would be achieved if the process between the inlet state and the exit pressure were isentropic. Basically, here if you see, we have the isentropic process, and it will give you the maximum work output, and this is the actual work, and it will produce the less work output compared with this one. Normally we know the efficiency is always less than 100%, so it means we have to divide this work by this one. But this is the maximum one, and this is the this is less than this one. So we have to divide this one to this one, otherwise we will get the answer more than 100%. So it's easy to remember that we have to divide less value by more value. So it will be like this one. We have the actual work, and then we have the ideal work or the isentropic work. So this is called the isentropic efficiency of the turbine. Or in terms of enthalpy, we can say that isentropic efficiency is simply H1, the enthalpy at point A, minus the enthalpy at point 2A, which is the actual one, divided by the enthalpy at point 1, and then we have the H2S as for the isentropic process, because H2S is equal to S1. So this is the isentropic efficiency of the turbine. In the same way, we can check the isentropic efficiency of the compressor or pump. Because we are talking about the compressor now, in the compressor we have to input the work. So in the ideal case, we have to input less work, but in the actual work or in the actual process, the work input value is more than the ideal one. Because in the actual one, there are some losses, so the input will be more than the ideal one. So here, if you see the isentropic efficiency of a compressor, so it is defined as the ratio of the work input required to raise the pressure of a gas to a specified value in an isentropic manner to the actual work input. So actual work input is more, so we are going to divide the isentropic by the actual one. So you can see here we have the isentropic efficiency, so it's isentropic compressor work divided by the actual compressor work, or the work with isentropic process and divided by the work with actual process. And in terms of enthalpies, you can see it's simply H2S minus H1 upon H2A minus H1. So simply the isentropic, which is this one, H2S minus H1, and then we have the actual one, which is H2A minus H1. In the same manner, we can find the pump efficiency as well. For the pump here, we have H2A minus H1, but the WS or the reversible process for the pump, we normally use this formula Vp2 minus P1. This is already we have discussed in the previous slide that the isentropic reversible work is equal to Vp2 minus P1. So for pump, normally we use this formula divided by H2A minus H1. This is basically the actual work. This is the ideal work, and this is the actual work. So this is the end of chapter 7, or the topic of entropy. Hopefully you have got the idea of entropy. For any problem, you can contact me. Thank you.